My brother got a MacBook for college. I got dad's dead PC, and mom said, be grateful. I rebuilt it in secret. Months later, my tech startup went viral, and my parents walked into my garage demanding their share. If you ever want to know your true value in a family, wait until there is something to split. In my case, it was a college laptop. My brother Max got a brand new, top-of-the-line MacBook Pro for college. It came preloaded with Adobe Suite Final Cut Pro and even a custom engraving that said, "Go change the world, Max." My parents practically treated the unboxing like a ribbon-cutting ceremony. My mom took pictures of him opening it like she was welcoming a newborn baby into the family. My dad stood there nodding with solemn pride, the same way he looked at his grill when it cooked steak perfectly. I, on the other hand, got my dad's old desktop PC. Not just old, prehistoric. I am pretty sure the last time that thing turned on, YouTube still had a 5-star rating system. It came with a thick layer of dust, an internal fan that wheezed like a dying animal, and a sticky note taped to the monitor that said, "Use grateful eyes." That was my mom's version of a pep talk. Be grateful, she told me, smiling like a villain who had just cut the brakes. I did not say anything. I just carried the computer to my room. I had learned early that reacting in my family was a trap. If I complained, I was ungrateful. If I accepted it quietly, I was resilient. And if I quietly did something incredible with whatever they handed me, that was when the panic started. I did not have Max's flair. I did not have his 4.2 GPA. I did not have the leadership potential that apparently glowed so brightly it blinded my parents to anything I ever did. What I had was curiosity and an unhealthy obsession with figuring out how things worked, especially when they were not supposed to work anymore. So while Max went off to college with his shiny silver laptop and a crowd of family cheerleaders, I stayed home and cracked open a PC case held together by prayer and dried ketchup. Inside was pure chaos. Wires dangled like vines, the power supply was broken. The motherboard looked like it had survived the Great Depression. But there was something else inside too, opportunity. Because fixing things, especially things that had been abandoned, had become my specialty. I started digging through old forums, YouTube repair videos, and Reddit threads that had not been updated in 5 years. I pulled spare parts from garage sale towers. I rebuilt a boot system from scratch. I custom wired a cooling fan using a dollar store desk fan and leftover glue from my 8th grade science project. Slowly, like Frankenstein's monster, the thing blinked to life. It was not pretty, it was not fast, but it was mine. And while Max uploaded selfies from his dorm with captions like "Work hard, play hard" next to his laptop computer and "hot beverage," I was in my basement building something that would quietly change my life. But I am getting ahead of myself. This was never just about a busted PC. This was about every moment that led up to it. The birthdays where Max got AirPods and I got socks. The family dinners where everyone asked about his lectures and no one asked whether I was still alive. The time my science project got selected for regionals and my parents said, "Oh, cool, but have you seen Max's economics paper?" I was not the black sheep. I was the invisible one. Somewhere along the way, I stopped trying to be seen and started building a world where I did not need them to look at me. The broken PC was the first spark. 1 week after I fixed it, I accidentally turned it into something else entirely. A prototype, an idea, something I had been sketching in notebooks for months but had never had the hardware to test. It was a modular desktop unit with an open framework that could adapt to cheap replacement parts, like a Raspberry Pi had a child with a Swiss Army knife. I did not know if it would work. I only knew I could not stop. So I kept going. Late nights. Energy drinks. Coding while my parents watched TV upstairs and assumed I was playing Fortnite in the dark. Soldering circuit boards by hand with shaky fingers and a cracked soldering pin I bought from eBay. Sketching diagrams on the backs of junk mail. Saving files on 5 different USB drives because I did not trust the system not to explode. Max called once to brag about his dorm suite and the cafe lattes in his student lounge. I just said, "Cool." He did not ask what I was doing. No one did. Maybe that was the best part. Because when no one is watching, there is no one there to tell you what you cannot do. The startup did not begin as a startup. It began as a fix, then an upgrade, then a prototype I posted anonymously in a tech subreddit just to see if anyone cared. They did. A retired engineer commented that if I built it into a kit, he would buy 5. Someone else asked where they could donate to make it real. I did not even have a name for it yet, but I had something better: momentum. And all of it started with that busted, wheezing computer my mom handed me like a punishment. That was when I knew I was not just fixing old hardware. I was rewriting the whole damn system. The Reddit post was not supposed to do numbers. It was 3 in the morning, and I was riding the high of finally getting my Frankenstein rig to boot without sounding like dying raccoons were trapped inside the fan. I snapped a picture of the build on my desk. It was a weird mesh of recycled parts, zip ties, and handwritten notes taped across the side panel like a mad scientist journal. I captioned it honestly. I said I had rebuilt my dad's 2006 Office PC into a modular, repairable desktop. I said it booted Linux in under 5 minutes, ran clean, and felt weirdly personal. I added a few photos. Nothing fancy, no clickbait, no begging for upvotes. I just posted it. The next morning, I woke up to 6,000 upvotes. By lunchtime, it was 17,000. By dinner, I was answering direct messages from engineers hobbyists and one guy who worked at a nonprofit teaching coding to underprivileged kids in Detroit. He asked if I would consider turning the concept into something students could learn to build from scrap hardware. That message stayed with me, because suddenly, it was not just about me anymore. It was about everyone who ever got the broken leftovers, the hand-me-down junk, the Be Grateful specials, while someone else in the house got everything new and shiny. My inbox exploded. People offered tips, wiring diagrams, and testing help. One guy wanted to send me parts from his company's discarded hardware pile. Another asked if I had considered doing a Kickstarter. Meanwhile, upstairs, my parents were arguing about which Netflix password still worked. They did not ask why I had been sleeping 3 hours a night. They did not ask why I had stopped eating dinner with them. They did not ask why I kept disappearing into the garage and soldering until my hands shook. Max called again. He needed help logging into our family Hulu account. As if it were an afterthought, he asked if I still lived at home. I said yes. He laughed and said, "That sucked." Then he hung up. I did not even bother responding because by then I had prototype V2 on the table. It was slimmer, quieter, and easier to assemble. I had ordered some parts from eBay, picked up others from local shops, and even bartered with a guy in town who had a busted projector he wanted to trade. My bedroom looked like a tech graveyard, except I was performing resurrection rituals every night. I did not have a business plan, but I did have a name: Wrecker. Built from scraps, made to last. It felt right. No venture capital, no slick logo, just the idea of building something lasting out of the pieces most people threw away. I bought a domain name for $12. I uploaded a short page with a rough overview, some build instructions, a contact form, and then I made a second Reddit post linking to it. This time, it went viral. Not just on Reddit. Tech forums picked it up, Discord channels shared it, Facebook groups found it. Even one Reddit moderator messaged me and asked if I knew it had hit Hacker News. I did not know, but I became very aware when I got my first bulk inquiry. Someone asked if I would be able to supply 20 to 25 kits per month for a community learning program. They said they had funding available. Funding, as in money. I opened the spreadsheet I had been using to track parts and suppliers and started calculating. And here was the wild part. I could do it. If I streamlined the parts, automated some printing, maybe outsourced laser-cut panels to a local shop, I could actually fill that order. I did not need a Shark Tank investor. I just needed Wi-Fi and enough desk space to build 5 units at a time. So, I cleared the garage. I sold my childhood bike, my barely working Xbox, and an old coin collection my dad had always said was worthless anyway. I pushed aside the lawn tools and folding chairs. I laid down a cheap plastic table from a clearance sale. Just like that, Wrecker headquarters was born, 15 feet from the fridge my mom stocked for Max's visits home. Still, no one in my house noticed. No one asked about the shipping boxes that started arriving. No one asked about the 3D printed casings stacked on the laundry room shelf. No one asked about the soldering fumes or the fact that I was running to the post office every afternoon with carefully packed kits wrapped in brown paper. Max was busy being the family trophy. Dad bragged about Max's Dean's List status to anyone who would listen, even though the only reason Max passed economics was because he copied someone's homework for a full semester. I knew because I had seen the messages, but I said nothing. I had 20 new orders to fulfill. I was emailing an engineer in Germany who wanted to help optimize my cooling system. I had a phone call scheduled with a school district in Arizona that wanted to roll out Rekor in 3 of their classrooms. The kid who got the broken PC was quietly building something bigger than any of them could imagine. Still, part of me wondered when they would notice. When would the people who told me to be grateful realize they had handed me a spark? They would find out soon enough, just not the way they expected. It was not a holiday or anything. Max just showed up one Friday night with 3 duffel bags, a Bluetooth speaker, and a grin like he owned the place. My mom practically burst into tears when she saw him. She hugged him like he had survived a war and fussed over his dorm, his classes, his professors, his life. Dad grinned from the couch and started pulling up ESPN because apparently bonding time had begun. Nobody asked why Max came home unannounced. Nobody asked why he did not bring his laptop, but I noticed. I noticed everything. More importantly, I noticed what Max noticed. Because Max, bless his barely passing GPA, was not exactly subtle. The first time he walked past the garage, he did a double take. He saw the tables, the stacked kits, the boxes labeled Rekor Batches Week 4, the soldering gear, the whiteboard covered in code sketches and prototype notes. He stood in the doorway like he was trying to remember whether this was still a garage or some kind of tech lab. He asked if I was building stuff. I did not even look up. I just said yes. He scoffed and called me Mr. Elon, then walked off like I had just told him I was painting rocks. But the seed was planted. Over the weekend, he kept circling. He watched from the corner of his eye. He picked up random tools like he knew what they were. At dinner, Mom made a big show of asking him about school. Dad cut in and said Max's professors loved him and that one of them had told him he had leadership in his blood. I almost choked on my spaghetti. Max smirked and shrugged, saying he might be moving into some kind of mentorship role. Meanwhile, I had shipped out 32 kits that week. Rekor was being tested in 2 pilot classrooms. A tech blog had emailed me for an interview. But no one asked what I had been up to. Not once. Until Sunday afternoon. I came back from the post office balancing a stack of return receipts and found Max sitting at my desk using my PC. He spun slowly in my chair like some cartoon villain. He told me my website was clean. A bit basic, but it loaded fast. I stared at him and asked why he was touching my stuff. He told me to relax. He said he was just curious. Then he added that he had not known I was building a whole startup in there, and that Mom and Dad did not know either. He said it like it was a joke, but his eyes did not match his tone. That was when I realized something. Max was uncomfortable. Uncertainty did not look good on him. He was used to being the one people bragged about. He was used to being the one who got applause just for showing up. And now he was sitting in my garage using my Wi-Fi, clicking through a website I had built from scratch while he was sipping chai lattes at his campus Starbucks. I asked him what he wanted. He shrugged and said that if this thing took off, maybe I should let him know. He said it could be fun to collaborate. Collaborate. I blinked. He said I could handle the nerdy stuff and he could handle the pitch. He said he could help get investors clean it up, get it on shelves. I just stared at him. This man could not format a Word document without crashing something. He once called HDMI a setting, and now he wanted to pitch my company? I did not argue. I did not have to, because 2 days later, Rekor got featured in a newsletter run by a guy who used to work at MIT. That link got reposted, then picked up by a low-level tech journalist. The journalist messaged me asking for a quick call, and that call turned into a full article. The headline said that this teen had turned scrap into a startup that could disrupt the DIY PC industry. It dropped on a Wednesday. By Thursday, Rekor's waitlist had 200 names. By Friday, I had sold out of all current units. By Saturday morning, I was trending. Not worldwide or anything huge, but in tech circles, people were suddenly talking about the kid with the modular build kits. That was when things shifted at home. My mom stood in the hallway, holding her phone with a confused frown. She asked if I knew someone named Chris Tenner. I froze and asked why. She said he had emailed the family account asking if he could schedule a video interview with me about Recore. Then she asked what Recore even was. I took a breath and told her it was my company. Dad leaned in from the living room and asked if I was in trouble. Max, sitting on the couch with his arms crossed, muttered that I was not in trouble. I was blowing up. That was when Mom gave me the look. The "why didn't you tell us" look. As if they had ever given me space to share anything that did not involve Max or matching towels for the guest bathroom. I just shrugged. I told them they had said to be grateful, and I had been. Grateful for the silence. Grateful for the neglect. Grateful enough to never need their help again. At first, their interest started small. My mom leaned against the garage door frame like she had discovered the place for the first time, and told me I should think about incorporating just to protect myself legally. Dad chimed in and said they could help because they had experience. Experience. My dad had once tried to start a pressure washing side hustle and nearly power blasted the neighbor's cat. I nodded politely and told them I was already working with someone on that. Mom's voice spiked as she asked who. I told her I had a business mentor, someone from the incubator program I had applied to. Dead silence. Max, who had been conveniently walking past, stopped in place and asked what an incubator was. I explained that it was a startup incubator. They helped young founders scale. He tried to look unfazed and said it sounded like Shark Tank with less yelling. Honestly, that was not a terrible summary. But once the article was out, the family mood changed drastically. I was no longer the forgotten second son. I was a potential lottery ticket. They started casually showing up in the garage while I worked, offering advice I never asked for. Dad told me I should add a screen so people would know the unit was working. Mom said the logo needed more pop. Max once printed out a fake spreadsheet to show me how he could help track synergy trends, which I am 98% sure he copied from a marketing blog. It would have been funny if it had stayed ridiculous, except it did not. One evening, I found Max in the garage alone, hunched over my prototype shelf with his phone out taking pictures of everything. I asked what he was doing and tried to keep my voice level. He jumped and said it was nothing. He claimed he just wanted to show some friends, maybe get me some exposure. I walked over and deleted the photos myself. His jaw tightened, but he did not say anything then. Later that night, the real blow came. I got an email from a startup forum I had joined months earlier. It notified me of a new thread in the DIY Tech Kits section by a user named Max Innovates. I clicked it. There, plain as day, was a post titled, "Coming soon, modular DIY PC kits from our family to yours." Below it were photos of my designs, my layout, my kits, but they had been renamed. Court Crate, a family-powered innovation project by Max and his last name. I stared at the screen for a full minute, my heartbeat ringing in my ears. Family-powered. The only thing Max had ever powered was the blender when he made protein shakes he never cleaned up. I marched straight to his room. His door was closed, but I did not knock. He looked up smiling like he had just brokered world peace and said he guessed I had seen the post. I asked him what it was. He leaned back and told me to relax. He said it was just a teaser. He said it was not like he had said I was not involved. I told him he had posted my work without permission. He said we were family, like that word fixed anything. He said we were stronger, together. He told me to think about it. He would handle the marketing. I would do my nerdy tech stuff, and we would split everything. He added that Mom and Dad already loved the name Court Crate. He asked if it had a ring to it. I did not answer with words. I walked back to the garage, locked my cabinets, encrypted my drives, and changed every password I had. Then I wrote a cease and desist letter to my brother. I typed it, printed it, and hand-delivered it. He laughed when he saw it. He asked if I was serious. I told him I was dead serious. He smirked and asked if I really thought that would stop him. No, But I knew what would. I reached out to my contact at the tech blog. I sent proof screenshots and time-stamped prototypes. I also forwarded everything to the school Max attended, because stealing intellectual property while benefiting from student resources is academic fraud, especially when the intellectual property is not yours. By morning, the post was gone. Max, however, was not. He stormed into the garage in the middle of a packaging run with wild eyes and accused me of reporting him to the school. I told him I had protected my work. He said I was unbelievable. I told him that, no, I was just done letting him cash checks off work he did not do. That was the beginning of the real split. Not just between me and Max, but between me and the entire fantasy my parents had clung to for years. The one where Max was the golden child and I was the backup. They could not handle it. They kept asking me to forgive him, to be the bigger person, to keep it in the family. But Recor was not family-owned, it was family-proof, and I was just getting started. A week passed after Max's little stunt with the fake company, the stolen photos, and the family-powered nonsense. I thought things had quieted down. What had actually happened was worse. They had regrouped. Max slunk back to campus with his ego bruised and his phone mysteriously reset to factory settings. No comment. But now, my parents were taking center stage, and they did not like being out of the loop anymore, especially not when there were whispers. One of my mom's Pilates friends had apparently seen a LinkedIn post about Recor. Her son was a teaching assistant at a tech boot camp and mentioned a scrappy modular startup built by that kid from Ridgeview. Mom decided that meant I needed help, and by help, she meant control. It was a Thursday morning. I had a shipping deadline for a school pilot kit and a Zoom call scheduled with a nonprofit in Vancouver. That was when the knock came. I opened the door and found my parents standing side by side like real estate agents or amateur hostage negotiators. Mom held a binder. Dad held a travel mug and the kind of forced smile people wear right before telling you your dog ran away. Mom said they wanted to talk. I asked about what. She said they wanted to talk about my future. I stepped aside reluctantly, mostly because I did not have the energy to argue while holding a soldering iron. They walked into the garage like tourists, heads turning, eyes scanning, every label, wire, and bin, like they were preparing to open a Yelp page on the operation. Then Mom dropped the bomb. She flipped open the binder like it was the Constitution and said they had been talking and they thought it was time to make this a real business. I blinked and told her it already was a real business. Dad nodded and said yes, but they meant with proper structure, a family LLC. They would handle the finances and keep things clean while I focused on my little builds. My little builds. I turned to my mom and asked if she wanted me to hand over ownership. She told me not to be dramatic. Her tone made me want to flip a table. She said we would all benefit. After all, it was ours. Ours. She said yes casually, like that was obvious. They had given me the garage. They had given me the roof over my head. They had given me the PC, even if it was old, and that PC had gotten me started. I almost laughed. Instead, I reached into a drawer, pulled out a document, and slapped it on the workbench. It was the sole proprietorship certificate. Recor was already registered under my name. Their faces stiffened. Mom blinked and asked when I had done that. I told her I had done it months ago. She said I had not told them. I told her they had not asked. Dad set his mug down with a hollow thunk, harder than necessary. Then he shifted tones and told me I was getting in over my head. He said I had something decent going, but I did not know how the world worked yet. He said I should let them help. I told him no. I told him he did not want to help. He wanted to own it. Mom's voice sharpened. She called me ungrateful. There it was, the golden phrase, the family motto. Be grateful. Be grateful for being ignored. Be grateful for the broken leftovers. Be grateful that they only noticed me when other people started noticing first. I leaned back against the bench and let the silence sit for a second. Then I said calmly that I did not need a family LLC. I needed space to work. Dad's tone dropped cold and rigid, almost corporate. He said maybe it was time I started paying rent. I smiled. Then I told him I already did. I told him to check the mortgage statement. That one hit hard because they did not know. 2 months earlier, I had started making silent contributions to the mortgage, directly through the portal, just to keep the peace. Now, I was not so sure I wanted to keep doing that. Dad asked if that was supposed to impress them, though his face said otherwise. I told him no. It was supposed to remind them that I was not their intern. They left without another word, but not before my mom said something under her breath. She said Max would have handled this differently. She was right. Max would have let them take over. I would not. And just to make sure there were no more surprise visits, I installed a keypad lock on the garage door. That weekend, something even crazier happened. The nonprofit in Vancouver loved the pilot kits. They wanted to order 100 more. They also invited me to present Wrecker at a youth tech summit, flight and hotel covered. I stared at the email for a long time before calling the one person I knew would understand. My old computer science teacher, Mr. Groves. He was the first person who ever told me I had potential, back when I got detention for hacking the school printer and making it play MIDI music during tests. He picked up on the second ring and asked if I was finally going pro. I told him it looked like it. He said it was about time. Just like that, I felt something shift. No more hiding in garages. No more explaining myself to people who only saw me when I could be used. It was time to take Wrecker beyond that house. Far beyond. 3 weeks later, I stepped onto a conference stage in a hotel ballroom in Vancouver. There were 2 massive banners behind me. One had my name and the Wrecker logo. The other simply read, "Innovation isn't always polished." Someone from the summit team had pulled that quote from my Reddit post. They were right. I was not polished. I still use zip ties to hold some prototype parts together. I still shipped from my garage. The first version of my business cards had my Venmo handle on them because I had not figured out invoicing yet. But that morning, I stood in front of an audience of 600 educators, engineers, coders, and founders. I showed slides, I shared test results, I even got a round of applause when I explained how every Wrecker kit used discarded parts from schools and nonprofits, repurposed, cleaned, and rebuilt. I ended with one sentence. I said I had not been given much, but I had been given enough to build something better. The applause lasted longer than I expected. Backstage, one of the organizers handed me a lanyard and congratulated me. She told me I was one of 5 people selected for direct funding interviews. I blinked. Funding. She said it could be up to $100,000, non-equity, just support. I stood there for a second with my hands literally shaking. A few hours later, I was sipping terrible hotel coffee in a quiet lounge area, waiting to speak with 2 potential donors. One was from a used tech fund. The other was from a hardware accelerator. That was when my phone buzzed. It was Max. He texted that I was at that nerd conference. He said Mom had seen a tweet and was freaking out. He said Dad thought we needed to talk. Then he added, LOL. I did not reply. 5 minutes later, a screenshot appeared. It was a Facebook post with my name, my face, and a picture of the conference banner. But it was not from a news page. It was not from tech media. It was from my mother's account. She wrote that she was so proud of her brilliant son. She said I had come so far. She said she had always known I would do something amazing with my tech skills. Then came the hashtags. Family business. Wrecker family business. I almost spit out my coffee. I stared at the screen like it had personally insulted me. The same woman who told me to be grateful when I got a 12-year-old broken PC was now publicly claiming credit for a business she had tried to hijack, a business she had wanted me to hand over only weeks earlier. Then I saw the comments. People told her she must be such a proud parent. They said they knew I was gifted. They asked when we were launching in the States. They said they could not wait to support our family venture. I closed the app. I did not block her. I did not comment. I just quietly updated the About page on the Wrecker website that evening. I added a short section about the founding story. It included the busted PC, the ignored dinners, and the family support that never showed up until the money did. I did not name names. I did not have to. The wording was enough for anyone who knew me. Apparently, a few people from back home did. The next day, during the post-panel networking session, a woman tapped my shoulder and asked if I was Mason. I said yes. She introduced herself as Jill and said her brother lived in Ridgeview. He had sent her my story. According to him, I was the kid who got tossed the junk PC and had just gotten a standing ovation in Vancouver. I could not help laughing. She smiled and said she worked with a school district back in Colorado. They wanted to bring me in for a pilot. They had 4,000 students across 12 schools. I nearly dropped my drink. She handed me a card and told me to think about it. She said they would fund my travel. After she walked away, I just stood there, surrounded by tables full of people pitching million-dollar apps and AI-powered toothbrushes, holding a card from someone who actually wanted to invest in kids who got junk. That was when I realized I had built more than a business. I had built proof. Proof that you do not need a golden laptop or cheerleaders in your living room to matter. Sometimes you just need a broken PC, a soldering iron, and a reason to keep going. When I got home from Vancouver, the house felt rehearsed. Mom was chopping salad in the kitchen like a cooking show contestant. 3 plates were set. Max appeared from the hallway the moment I walked in. He called me a world traveler and said he heard I had crushed it. Before I could answer, Dad began his full performance. He talked about how proud they were. He said everyone at church was talking about me. He said we should sit down soon and talk expansion. He said Max had some ideas for the next phase of Wrecker. I did not sit. I did not even take off my jacket. I walked into the garage. Except it was not the garage anymore. It had been scrubbed and reorganized. My prototype table had been shoved to the back. My bins had been moved. A new folding table sat front and center with Max's name on a notepad and a ring light aimed squarely at the workspace. I turned around and asked why they had touched my workspace. Mom did not flinch. She said it was not just mine. It was the garage. Dad added that Max needed space. He said Max was planning some pitch content. Max leaned in the doorway and said he was just going to shoot a few concept videos for Wrecker's next phase. Then he paused and said he might include a few throwback clips. Me, him, and the first prototype. Real origin story vibes. That was when I laughed. Not sarcastically, calmly. I told him he was never in the origin story. Max blinked, caught off guard. Dad stood up like I had insulted a flag and started in on my attitude. I cut him off. I told them we were not doing that. Mom folded her arms and said they were trying to help. I asked if they were helping by hijacking my space and filming a fake narrative. She snapped and called me ungrateful. Of course, there it was again, the family motto, be grateful. I took out my phone, opened a folder, and held up the screen. It was a video from the Vancouver school pilot. Kids were building Wrecker kits. One kid said his brother had called him stupid, and now he was showing him how to code. Then I looked at my family and told them what no one in that video had said. No one had said, my family made it all possible. I walked back into the garage. I moved my table, I pulled down their signs, I turned the ring light to the wall, then I taped a note to the inside of the door. Not a family business. Not a group project. Not for sale. 2 days later, I packed every prototype, every build file, and left for Colorado. I changed my shipping address too. Then I paid off the rest of the mortgage and called the bank. I told them I wanted to remove 2 co-signers from the monthly contribution agreement. The person on the phone asked if I was the primary payer. I said yes. I had been for 5 months. They processed it within 24 hours. On the 6th day, I got a text from my mom asking why the mortgage statement said $0 due from them. I replied that I was no longer investing in ungrateful partners. A few weeks after I moved operations out of the house, I got an email from a production facility in Oregon. They had seen a Wrecker kit in a school video and wanted to know whether I had ever considered scaling it for national distribution. I had not seriously, not until that moment. We set up a call. I showed them the parts list, the DIY manuals, and the modular design. They showed me a cost breakdown and warehouse capacity. By the end of the week, I had a tentative agreement on the table. Wrecker was becoming more than a garage project. It was becoming a brand. I did not post about it. I did not tweet. I did not gloat. But my parents found out anyway. Of course they did. The same woman who could not remember my birthday once apparently had a Google alert for Wrecker Tech founder. I found out when I got another email, this one from a local reporter who wanted to do a family-focused piece on innovation and parental support. The subject line said, "My mom had said I would be open to interviewing together." I replied with one sentence. I said, "That must have been my business partner's evil twin." A day later, Mom called, not texted, not emailed, an actual call. When I picked up, she jumped in like we had not gone weeks without speaking. She said they thought it would be nice to celebrate this together. She said I had done so much. She said they were so proud. I asked if she had told journalists we could interview together. There was silence. Then she said they had just wanted to be included and asked if that was wrong. I told her being included was not wrong. Claiming credit for something she had tried to take over was. She sighed and said I had changed. I told her, yes, so had the locks. The next day, I got a text from Max. He said that if I ever needed marketing help, he was down. He told me to send him my pitch deck and said he would boost it. So I sent him a PDF. It was a single page, black background, white text. It said, "Wrecker has no open roles for liars." I have not heard from him since. These days, I work from a small office in Boulder. I have a team of 4 real people who believed in the mission from day one. We have shipped over 2,000 kits to underfunded schools in 3 states. Every now and then, someone asks me about my origin story. I keep it short. I started with a broken PC and no one cheering. Because sometimes that is all you need. Not applause, not permission, just a reason and a screwdriver.